Hello and welcome back to the CFO Playbook podcast with me, David McClelland. And here on the CFO Playbook, as always, we get under the skin of how world-class finance leaders leverage technology, set goals, make plans, manage teams, and much, much more. And in today's show, we're speaking with the joint CFO and CEO of a Silicon Valley scale-up on a journey to disrupt accountancy and ERP software.
Whenever people ask me for fundraising advice, I say just go build a great business. Honestly, I think fundraising is incredibly easy if you build a great business. Our investors actually sat me down after the A and they were like, John, you have been so thoughtful with capital. You actually need to learn how to spend. I think just that level of empathy and alignment can get you incredibly far as a CFO.
CFO Playbook is here every month with exclusive finance leadership insights. So make sure you subscribe, browse through our back catalogue, and get in touch, as many of you do, because your suggestions really do help to shape the show. Right, let's meet today's guest.
This episode of the CFO Playbook is brought to you by Soldo. Trusted by over 25,000 organizations across 31 countries, Soldo combines pre-programmed cards, an intuitive app, and a powerful management platform to replace manual processes with efficiency and control. To find out more or to book a demo, visit soldo.com.
John Glasgow, CFO and CEO at Campfire. Welcome to the CFO Playbook.
Thank you so much, David. Really excited to be here today.
Where are you joining us from, and what's been going on in your world this week?
Yeah, I'm in downtown San Francisco. I live just north of here in Marin, and we have all of our headquarters is here. So almost the entire company is here besides our New York office. We've been really focused on setting up the company for success in 2026, ensuring we had plan. We had a phenomenal 2025. We just had sales kickoff and kind of working with the leadership team here to ensure everybody has everything they have in place, whether it's from a budget perspective or resourcing perspective, to go hit quota, to go hit plan, to go hit our big number.
Yeah, beginning of 2026, exciting times. I definitely want to talk about your company Campfire today, as well as a lot of other things during the course of our chat. For now, though, just to give us all some context, can you give us the 20-second version of what you do at Campfire?
Yeah, Campfire is a modern ERP for growing companies, and tech is our largest vertical. But ultimately, we automate a lot of the transactional accounting and the preparation of the analysis and allowing our customers to focus on strategic work.
Okay. We will definitely come back to that in a moment. First of all, though, I want to dive straight into to talk about your role, or perhaps roles, CFO and CEO. Is this a temporary thing? Is this all part of, mucking in and scaling up a company, or is this more of a strategic choice for you?
It's both. So I was in finance for 15 years and was a finance leader at companies of about our size. And so that was actually the founding story of Campfire, was really why I was frustrated with our own ERP. And I really felt there was an opportunity in the market. And so I am customer number one at Campfire. And we, of course, are on Campfire since day one of the company. And so me just being super close to the product, whether we're fundraising, whether we're doing board reporting, whether it's just preparing data for tax return, I want to ensure the product is amazing for me as customer number one. And so being CFO is important. But then at the same time, yes, I am going to step out of the CFO role and allow someone else to take that on full time. And then I'll focus more narrowly on CEO.
Okay. Well, while you are wearing that CFO hat, you've just closed $100 million across Series A and Series B rounds, including 65 million Series B, co-led by Accel Partners, whose CFO Ben Dooley recently spoke with us right here on
Oh,
this
cool.
podcast. Yeah, I know he's great. Love the work that Accel does, of course, as well. Strikingly, you raised that 100 million in a matter of weeks. I think it was 12 weeks between A and B, wasn't it? I'm sure, I am absolutely certain that many who are listening today will want to know just how you did that. So what can you tell us about those raises? Was there financial metrics? Was there storytelling approaches? Was there anything that you found particularly resonated about you that resonated well with investors?
Whenever people ask me for fundraising advice, I say just go build a great business. Honestly, I think fundraising is incredibly easy if you build a great business. And so, running the perfect process, setting the perfect email, the perfect deck, eh, all of it's relevant on the edges, but at the core, and you could send them the worst deck in the world. Coming out of Y Combinator, they actually kind of promoted doing overly Spartan, basic, terrible decks for our seed round. That was a different stage of the business. Um, but for RA, um, I had success with our partner, John Locke from Excel. He was on the board of Invoice to Go.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Similarly sized, about 100 employees when we were acquired for 625 million. And so we had worked together. He had a great outcome there and we decided to partner again he did the A there, he did the A here. So we had good knowledge of working together. So I think that's always helpful if you can find something like that. For those that don't have that in place, we were at a material inflection point. We have more than doubled revenue each of the last 6 quarters. And going into the A, there was real inflection. We had just added our first account executive because the first 2 years I was the account executive, and the slope just got steeper. And investors, even at A, think about if I put money into this business, what comes out? And they saw an early data point that just with me on the sales team, the business can grow incredibly fast. But adding one more person, the curve's getting steeper. So giving this business capital and adding more people to go to market, theoretically, you can continue to steepen the curve. And we have done that. And so coming out of the $35 million the business more than doubled in the next month and a half. And we saw incredible demand from large, call it lower enterprise businesses, public companies, pre-IPO companies. And they were saying, your product demo is amazing. It has everything that we want,
Mm.
but we actually feel 35 million is not a lot of money. Talking to fellow CFOs, they were saying, I would like this just not even to be something we would ever even consider your going concern, your financial profile. And so bringing us to 100 million over the summer last year completely erased that concern. And we have then gone on to have incredible momentum in customers in the back half of 25. And that has allowed us to continue this momentum.
Yeah, I want to come on to how you manage that growth in a moment. The hockey stick, of course, but let's talk about allocation first. And looking through some of Campfire's materials online, you talk about what you're doing. You talk about new AI models that you're building as part of the product, LAMs or large accounting models, as opposed to the LLMs, large language models that we're all very familiar with. I'm going to guess that doing this and doing it well isn't particularly cheap. So, in terms of your strategy for allocating that 100 million or whatever between product development, go to market, like you suggested, and operational infrastructure, how are you allocating that resource as sensibly as you can?
We are the only ERP, to my knowledge, that has our own foundational model. And so we have made a material investment in AI. And so when people say, like, you say you're an AI native ERP, what does that actually mean? Well, we have our own foundational model here in San Francisco. We have an AI engineering team. We have our own GPUs. We
Mm.
are running our own models. We're training our own models. And that investment has allowed us for this very narrow task, like our models are not going to help you on like, you know, what, I don't know, help me think about all the consumer things that like an OpenAI is helping people with, like write this email for me, or, is this a
Yeah.
good contractor bid? My kids are sick. What is it? Um, but when it comes to accounting, we have found that we are the best in the world at building foundational models for this very narrow task of performing transactional accounting, invoice matching, transaction coding, doing the transactional accounting work because the team is just like laser focused on this one thing. And so the performance gains have been there relative to the leading commercial models for us. The other one is like the data never has to leave Campfire's environment because it's our own model. And so we have a higher level of security. And then a lot of our customers are audited. So we have great attribution on the model. And so to your point, the additional capital, like when we were a seed stage business going into the A, we'd only raised $3.5 million. And we lived off that for 2 years, and we still had half of it. So we had to be like incredibly thoughtful with capital, and wearing my kind of CFO hat, it was helpful on like, how do we just really, really be careful? But now I've really had to change into call it a CEO and CFO hat of our investors actually sat me down after the A, and they were like, John, you have been so thoughtful with capital. You actually need to learn how to spend. I think like we gave you the capital to deploy, and this is the end market is massive, and it takes capital to go win this end market. And so they actually wouldn't call it an intervention, but they did sit me down, and we had a conversation about it. And they're like, you have our blessing to start spending in ways that you never have before.
That's quite a conversation to have had, and I mean, really, that lines up very well to the next question that I wanted to ask about. When you are wearing the CEO hat and the CFO hat, are they inseparable? How do you know which hat you're wearing at any time when you're making these growth decisions? And are there any moments when your CFO perspective has overruled your, I guess, CEO instinct, or vice versa? Any conflict between the two? But I think certainly that point where your investors were sitting you down saying, "No, go spend. We want you to go spend." That certainly sounds as one kind of inflection moment on your journey wearing those two hats.
Yeah, there are many moments. One that really stood out was we actually a couple months ago decided to do something quite unique. We launched a $5 million buyout fund, and we'll buy you out of a legacy ERP contract. And on paper, from a CFO, from a financial model, as an Excel guy, it made 0 sense. Like, the math does not make sense, but it allowed us to build a notoriety in the market that CFOs kept coming up to me after we announced that, and even ones that didn't need a buyout that were signing with us, they were just like, "Wow, like, this is something we had not seen before in the category. Not sure how you guys pull off the math," and I ran all the math, and actually it's more attractive than it sounds. But, there are moments like that that, like, with the financial capital we have, and with investors saying, like, "This is the type of thing we need you to go invest in, get creative, find ways to capture market share, and really kind of build momentum," that this was one where the CFO hat just had to be sat down, and we just had to go for it. But I think in hindsight, putting the CFO back hat on, the ROI actually is there.
One of those potentially counterintuitive things that maybe because you were able to wear both hats at the same time, actually you were able to pull that off. And like you say, a creative move like that certainly makes some ripples. Coming back to your growth curve at Campfire, we mentioned the hockey stick earlier on. As someone who controls both the vision and the purse strings, I wonder what your advice is to our CFO audience who are watching and listening here on CFO Playbook on balancing those growth ambitions with the fiscal discipline, on managing both of those at the same time and knowing when to let go, when to listen to the investors and go spend. On the other hand, knowing actually we do need to be more careful at this phase in our growth.
The CFO needs to be incredibly thoughtful of what stage of business are you and what is the financial profile of the business. And even though we, just raised 100 million, it's not run wild and let's all just go spend. Like, I'm still really pushing the team. Do we actually need this head count? Can we start with a contract, or can we start with software? Um, but as a seed business, we were super, super careful with every dollar. At an A, I'm a little more like, let's think about innovation. Let's think about what we can do a bit differently. How do we kind of push the lever a bit? And then at B, you know, there's we're adding discipline while we actually accelerate spending. And that doesn't fully make sense. But what it means is essentially um, everything is a bit more thoughtful in terms of how capital is deployed. But at the same time, we are deploying more of it. I was analyzing a lot of historical data, and the accounting team was, it was very clear that like they prepared the numbers and they deliver the numbers, and then finance would take the data and do analysis on it. And I truly believe, in hindsight, the accounting role needs to own more of the analysis of the historical data set called traditional accounting data, and finance should be more forward oriented, doing the kind of forward looking analysis.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one that with Campfire, automating a lot of the transactional accounting and whether it's AI or just kind of a better user interface, however we're delivering the gains, doesn't matter. Ultimately, accountants just have more time when they're on Campfire. And so I'm really pushing our customers. And as a kind of a former corporate finance person, like them, I feel the liberty to be able to push them a bit of like, this is where the role is going. So I think that was really formative for me. Um, Now as the CFO, CEO at Campfire, I think just internally, I think a lot about all the times that there were like finance leaders in my life that were just saying like no to stuff. And I really push the team here. I don't actually really say no very often at all. Um, what I do here though, as the CFO, is I ask the team a ton of tough questions if I'm concerned about something, and I have them work through it essentially on their own. And if they can like solve all of the concerns, then it makes sense to proceed. I always start a conversation with people that I learned at a prior life at a public company that whenever I know we're gonna like disagree on whether it's headcount for like annual planning or they're asking me for budget for something, um, I start the conversation by saying, we want the same thing. We both want you to get to goal in 2026. I need you to get to goal in 2026. But ultimately, here's why we can't have what you're asking for. Or here's another way we're going to get there. Um, because ultimately, as a CFO, you are aligned with everybody at the company. If each of them hit their individual plan, you hit your financial plan. And we're here to solve this together.
As Campfire has evolved from startup to scale up through seed A and B rounds, I wonder how your role as leader there has evolved from managing, obviously managing budget, then managing headcount. You mentioned there about taking on new account managers as well in order to enable the scale. So, how have you found your role changed? Because, of course, as companies go through different stages, there comes a point when a different type of leadership is required for a different type of structure, a different size of structure as well.
Honestly, being a founder is probably the it's regarded as being, wow, you're a founder, but it's literally like you're doing everything that nobody else that you haven't hired for. So I think like in the very beginning, it was me and an engineer. I don't know how to write code. So I literally did everything at the company but write code. It's business and corporation. It's taxes. It's all the things that there's literally no one for. I did sales, marketing, customer success. I implemented Campfire for all of our early customers. Um, and then we hired an implementation person. And then I essentially fired myself from that role. We hired our first marketer. I fired myself from writing. I built our, first two websites. I did our press releases in the early days, fired myself from that role. And so you go from being the most generalist in the world to becoming more and more specialized with each hire that you make. And so right now we're hiring our first VP of sales. I am still the VP of sales. So I was our only AE and solution consultant doing all the demos and sales for 2 years. I hired my way out of that, but I still lead the team. I'm hiring my way out of leading the team. And it's very much being a chameleon that you've got. Now I spend a lot of time, I'm interviewing 3 to 5 people per day to join Campfire. I'm spending a lot of time trying to get better at interviewing. How do I get better at back channeling? That was the first 2 years, we hired somebody every other month, maybe if that. And in the last, couple months, we're now adding, 5 a week. And so I think my role has dramatically shifted for every stage of the business from a CFO and CEO perspective.
Going back to my time in industry, I was part of some big ERP system implementations in the 2000s, early 2010s, and back then they were complex, unwieldy, challenging to put together, let alone to unpick. And obviously, cloud and SaaS and AI have come along since then. That's all great for greenfield implementations with cloud, SaaS, AI, and so on. But realistically, what about those organizations that are responsible for having large ERP systems in there already. It's really challenging to migrate away from those legacy systems. So how do you address big companies, a lot of sunk cost, a lot of investment into those systems, and you come along with something that's shiny, new, and easy? How do you bridge the gap for them?
There is certainly a board and executive mandate, and certainly if you've not done so for your own team, you absolutely need to do so, which is a AI transformation for your organization. So many finance and accounting teams I meet with now are actually learning to write code in Claude code. The consistent feedback we're hearing is that a legacy ERP cannot handle the data volume of a modern organization. And so they're summarizing data into the ERP, particularly the larger folks, high volume, complex businesses, the larger ones, lower enterprise. And they need a modern core so they can leverage AI. And the data customers like FP&A, like audit, have much more granular data in the ERP. And this is just core. Like you need a great data foundation to be able to build an amazing house. Think of like a foundation in a house. And so that has been one of the biggest trends we have seen in the last few years is, hey, we're really excited about AI, but we've summarized data into the ERP to the point that AI is not valuable at all. And so we need to resolve that. And then you have great AI, and so maybe our team isn't ready to write code all day, right? And so like Campfire's AI, we can pick up the workloads. They're audit ready. There's kind of SOX ready for US businesses or IFRS ready. Um, there's big investments we've made. And so I think those are a couple things. The other one is implementations. I've been through some nightmares in my day, and so I rebuilt how implementations are done from the ground up, where it's done in, a month or 2 at most, and we do a lot of the work for you. We've got great implementation folks that can really just kinda, like, lift and shift all the historical data at a transaction level, um, and then once folks are live, there's that incredible value that I was describing.
The fact that you have a background in finance, obviously, when you are the CFO of Campfire is now the conversations that you're able to have with the CFO at other organizations who would be central to any migration or any deal between you and them, having that, I guess, shared experience is incredibly important.
It is, and it was very, very valuable in the early days because I mean, a lot of look, the product was rudimentary in the early days, and a lot of CFOs were just like, "John, given your background and our conversations, I know you're just gonna figure it out. So we're gonna hop on, we're gonna be early." These days on the bigger deals, I only get pulled in on like an executive alignment or I'll go to a CFO dinner and a great camaraderie at CFO dinners. But it was really valuable in the early days because so many customers were saying, John, like your product is early, but we're just buying you. And I think they're like, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I had kind of similar background as all of them. We had great vision and alignment. We shared the pain of legacy ERPs together and those customers have gone on to do incredible things with us and continue to believe in us and we build together.
The key decisions that you've made as CFO so far, and as Campfire continues on this growth curve, what what are the big decisions that you know are just around the corner?
Big decisions are certainly going to be about how do we think about new verticals, new countries. I think there's always this fine line between spreading, the team too thin, spreading the product too thin, versus it's time for something new, and we need to continue to open up new markets. And so that's something I continue to think about a lot. The good thing is, literally every company in the world needs accounting software, needs an ERP. And so I think there's no shortage of places to go, but we've got to ensure we are amazing at what we do and we are the best, and then we can continue to think about new markets before we do so.
And you mentioned about the different hats that you wear and eventually sacking yourself from those roles when the time is right. When do you see the time is right to sack yourself from the CFO position there? And What do you hope the relationship will be with whoever you hire instead as CFO?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think about this a lot right now. I think at some point this year, I will formally roll off as CFO. But I'm still going to use Campfire as a customer. I'm still going to be doing exec alignment. I'm still going to be going to CFO dinners. So I'm really not going anywhere. I think the team constantly reminds me that as the founder, you're incredibly involved in everything across the entire business, and you see everything. So that part won't go anywhere, but I do think there's an opportunity for someone to step in here and spend more time on it than I am and give it more love than I am today.
For our conversation today, John. But before I let you go, we have some quickfire CFO Playbook podcast questions that we put to all of our guests. So take a sip of water. And are you ready for our quickfire round?
Sure am.
Super stuff. Right. So, what is the one thing in finance or procurement today that you would like to leave behind, to throw out the window, never see again, and why?
I would say this assumption that finance software is just boring and tired and like has to be the certain way. I think, we can have nice things in finance in the CFO suite. I think 5, 10 years ago, candidly, I don't think that was the case. It was just like business software looks bad and it's hard to implement and hard to configure. And I think like taking almost a consumer approach should be table stakes, where it's as easy as going on Netflix or something like that, and it's into that level of intuition for the product and configuration. I think needs to be the bar.
Leaving behind the notion that business software is boring. Why can't ERP software be just like Netflix? Other streaming services are available. But yeah, I take your point. I take your point. It makes it accessible, almost makes it fun to use. If not fun, certainly familiar, which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
If you could automate one part of your role tomorrow, John, what would that be?
I would say I have to produce an incredible amount of content, whether it's a LinkedIn post or whether it's for articles. And I'm not the best writer. And so like I'll, have some help with some AI to take my thoughts and put them. But I think that's a part that I would love to just automate away, is getting kind of more of the brain onto paper when I need to would be something that'd be helpful.
Sure, there are some brain computer interfaces just around the corner there in San Francisco being developed right now. And if you could nominate any company's CFO to appear on the CFO Playbook podcast, who would that be and why?
I would say one of our investors, if you know the business Mercury, the bank, Dan Kang he invested in our Series A. He's a CFO there and just incredibly thoughtful in terms of how he thinks about scaling at Mercury. And he operates in a unique environment that they're in a highly regulated, the word bank, this has all marketing, disclosures required. So he's got some nuances there, but they continue to be a North Star in our category. So I'm going to nominate Dan.
And finally, John, here on the CFO Playbook podcast, we are building an actual playbook, a collection of top advice from finance leaders like you that we plan on turning into a resource available for the community. So my question to you is, what is your top piece of advice for a fellow CFO that you would like me to enter in to our CFO Playbook?
You should ensure that there's strong alignment, that everybody truly sees that you are on the same side of the table as them when you're a finance business partner. And that's something that has worked so well for me in my career that, again, you start a conversation with a sales leader or a product leader, and they know they're not going to get the headcount in the annual plan. Just sit down and be like, we are fully aligned. I need you to get to goal because that means I get the goal. And so we need to get the goal together, but here's why we can't do this. And I obviously try and not just bring problems, but solutions. Here are some ways that I think we can still get you there, get you to plan in a creative way that isn't necessarily what you were asking for. But I think this could be a way we can both get there. Or why don't we work together and let's find a way to get you to plan. And I think just that level of empathy and alignment can get you incredibly far as a CFO.
That's a top piece of advice to make sure that conversations start off with you both heading in the same direction and not heading in opposite directions from the beginning. Listen, it's been great to speak with you today, John. Thank you so much for joining us on CFO Playbook, and all the very, very best for Campfire's future.
Thank you so much, David. This was really fun. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks all for listening.
And thank you all for joining us too. Don't forget to join us every month here on the CFO Playbook with more insights from finance leaders. But for now, from me, David McClelland, and all the team here, bye-bye.